The Heeters were the main villains in Dragon Ball Super's Granola arc, but how well do you know the Heeters? Do you know what the Heeters truly represent? Elec, gas, Maki, and oil. Do you know what they're really all about? On this video, we're going to go into the mythology and the backstory behind the Heeters. We're going balls deep, Dragon Balls deep, next. The villains of the Granola arc were revealed to be the Heeter family, and on this edition of Dragon Ball X Saiyuki, we're going to look at the inspiration behind the Heeter family, where Toriyama may have borrowed the concept, and how they relate to Frieza. Also, I want to point out that a lot of people have said that the Heeter gang reminds them of the Bojack gang, and I can kind of see where you're coming from, and that they kind of have that space pirate vibe, but the Heeters behave a little bit different. Whereas Bojack kind of had, it was him and his minions, and they were kind of faceless characters. I feel like the Heeter gang, on the other hand, they actually had personalities. In fact, they had different aspects of Frieza's personality, which ties back into Journey to the West. So joining me, of course, as always, Jordan's here, and the Dragon Lee. We're going to be talking about it, bro. What's up?
Not a lot, man. Just excited to talk about this.
Right. Now, I do want to let everybody know that Jordan did do a much more in-depth video on the Heeters themselves, comparing them to other aspects of Dragon Ball on his channel. I'll leave a link down below in the description so you can check out the Heeter video that he did over on his channel. But on here, we're going to talk about their comparison to Frieza and where the origin, where the hidden truth behind them lie. So go for it.
Yeah, so in past arcs, most of the villains that Goku has faced have some kind of character traits that kind of emulate the Monkey King. They all either want to be a king or an emperor. They all want to rule over the entire universe. They all want to be the strongest and most powerful.
The quest for power.
Yeah, all of those character traits really emulate who the Monkey King used to be in the Journey to the West. So as Goku is facing all these villains, it's like he's facing character traits that sort of represent the character that he's based on, which makes it makes it that much more interesting to see a purified version of the Monkey King face all these villains who have his detriments. But within the Granola arc, I noticed something new and unique, and that is Granola and the Heeters are both characters who are sort of a representation of two other characters' detriments, and that's Frieza and Vegeta. Granola, for example, he has a lot of Vegeta's negative character traits, and that's something that they play on. But when it comes to the Heeters, every Heater, particularly Elec and Gas, have personality traits that heavily emulate who Frieza used to be, at least within Dragon Ball Z. So yeah. Elec, for example, he's the leader of a group of space pirates, and he has the ambitions of taking over the universe exactly like Frieza. When I first read the Granola arc, he gave me really strong King Cold vibes, especially since he always has a glass of wine in his hand, and if you remember, back when King Cold was first introduced, he had that same thing going on.
Right, he's the aristocrat. He's the that's a very typical villain, Disney villain type of thing. But the difference is that King Cold actually had control of the Empire, whereas Elec wants control of the very same Empire that Frieza now governs. And so he's going to do what it takes. I noticed, too, that he's very cunning. Like we talked about the quest for power, and he's also a scumbag, which Frieza has shown aspects of being a slimy, two-faced scumbag who doesn't care about anybody but himself, including members of his own family. In Resurrection F, they even asked Frieza about resurrecting King Cold, and he says, nah, let's not bother with it. So you can compare that to sort of Elec not really caring about Gas dying during the final battle in the chapter, in the arc.
That's true. That's very true. And also, his ability to manipulate people. Elec knows how to recruit people underneath his wing and use them to his advantage. As a matter of fact, a lot of times that I saw Elec interacting with Gas, it reminded me a lot of how King Cold was under the impression that he had Frieza under his thumb all the time. Their relationship is very similar to me to King Cold and Frieza's, but King Cold, all he had going for him was his ability to manipulate and use people after Frieza was born, because Frieza was so much more powerful than him. So he sort of fell into just using other people to do his dirty work because he was no longer, the most powerful. Which brings me to Gas. He is the most powerful member of the Heeters crew. And one really interesting thing about him is that anytime a character gets in his way and makes him look weaker or worse than another character, he's very easily offended. He has a very large ego in that way. And he reminds me a lot of Frieza in that way. As a matter of fact, you can kind of consider Gas Bardock's Frieza. Because when Bardock faced Gas, Gas told Bardock that he represented a limit that Bardock could not surpass. He also gives Goku a lot of hell for being a less evolved, less complicated being than the Heeters, which is something that Frieza did to Goku. And his relation to Bardock is very, very, very similar to Frieza's relationship to Goku. Bardock is essentially the first person that ever broke his ego. He broke his pride.
And it's interesting because Gas's character, he also hates to lose. Like, we see Alec grant him this, use the dragon to grant him his wish or whatever, and he gets to be the strongest in the universe at that time, and his body is literally like wasting away, and because he is unwilling to lose to Goku, he's just unwilling to swallow his pride. Whereas same thing happened with Frieza. Goku gave Frieza multiple chances to live, not just in the recent stuff, but also in the older stuff. He gave Frieza chance after chance after chance, and Frieza kept biting him. He kept trying to kill Goku, and that's sort of like what happens to Gas. He can't accept that he's been beaten.
Yeah, that's right. Also, when Frieza went and trained and got his golden form, he got his power very, very, very quickly. Sort of like Gas being wished to be the strongest. And the first thing he went to do was go try to get revenge against Goku, and it hurt him. That was a mistake. That was a huge mistake. He made the same mistake that Gas made. As soon as he had a new power, he thought that he could go take everyone out, and he was wrong. He is a huge representation of a lot of aspects of Frieza's old personality traits. And Alec is the same, because the way he used to gain and use his intel was very foolish. Very similar to Alec. He would pit all these people against each other, and he would create all these enemies, and they would eventually screw him over in some way, whether it be Vegeta or, Goku. The way that he goes about using his intelligence is not nearly as refined as it is in modern Dragon Ball Super. Like he really he let his ego cause him to charge into situations head first without really thinking them through. And that's sort of what Alec did. Alec really didn't. He seems like he has this like master plan, but he didn't really actually think it all the way through. Like, it ended up failing in the end. He also has Frieza's lust for the Dragon Balls. That's something else that Alec and Frieza have in common. Whenever Frieza's first introduced into the story, he has, a huge lust for the Dragon Balls, much like Alec. And I've noticed that Toriyama likes to do these same character cycles over and over and over again, where he'll have them go through similar things to the Monkey King. And Frieza being killed, and then being sealed in hell, and then being put into this cocoon to just sit and think about his actions, is very similar to whenever Buddha sealed Sun Wukong into Five Phases Mountain so he would be trapped there to think about his sins and everything that he's done. But
that's what happens to Frieza.
Yeah, and then Frieza, when he comes out of it, he doesn't come out of it a better person. He actually just comes out of it a more intelligent person.
Yep.
And one thing I find very interesting about the scene where Gas takes out Alec and Gas is what Alec and Gas specifically are doing.
You mean when Frieza takes out Alec and Gas?
Yeah, when Frieza takes out Alec and Gas, what they're specifically doing when he takes them out. So Gas, of course, he just wants revenge on everyone in sight at that point. He wants revenge on Goku, Vegeta, Granola, and whenever he finally sees Frieza, his lust to feed his ego and feed his revenge ended up being what got him killed.
Yep.
And the person
Classic
who
karma.
did it, and the person who did it was Frieza. Like I said, this is a reoccurring theme in Dragon Ball, where, especially with Vegeta and Granola in this arc too, where you're sort of facing your past character traits and symbolically destroying them.
Yeah.
And that's what I see happening with Frieza and Elec and Gas. When he destroyed Elec and Gas, he symbolically destroyed 2 old aspects of his personality.
Yeah, but those aspects are still there, I think. I think he's still a prick. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, he's still evil, but he's just smarter about how he goes about it. So, for example, Elec, he prided himself in having information, but he didn't have enough. And Frieza knew everything from the beginning. He had all of his bases covered. He surpassed Elec in that way completely. And the way he went about using his information was also superior to Elec. Normally, if Frieza had all that information, he would have been much more rash about how he would have acted. He would have just rushed in there and took everyone out and tried to get his revenge. But that's not what he did this time. He sat and he watched and he listened and he let the problem work itself out. And then when he got there, instead of trying to get revenge, he just used his own strength that he had been training for to basically take out 2 people who were a threat to his empire. He wasn't worried about taking out Goku. He wasn't worried about taking out Vegeta because he knows them, as like I said in our last video about Frieza, he knows them better. He's smarter. He knows that he can manipulate them further. He knows that they are assets. And in that sense, he's much more intelligent than Elec because Elec didn't think that far.
Right.
Elec just wanted to keep everything in the family. He just wanted to, he wanted to manipulate Gas and Gas alone. That's the only person he thought he needed. But Frieza, he's figured out that if he trains for his power and trains his mind, that he can do things that Elec and Gas never could have achieved. Gas, he trained for 40 years, but when it came to satisfying his vengeance, he was willing to wish for his full potential. And Frieza would never do that. Modern Frieza would never do that because he's seen the value in training. He's seen the value in growing stronger, and he's seen the value of solving your own problems with your own power, unlike Gas. Same thing with Elec. Elec, he's just not as witty about how he goes about things as Frieza. And Frieza used to be that way. He wasn't always as intelligent about the moves that he made. He wasn't always as intelligent about how he used his
He thought he would never
intelligence.
go down. And then him going down so many times made him finally learn. That's pretty much what it was. Yeah, and I do like how his character has evolved. Like, it has changed. Now, when it comes to Oil and Mackie, there's not much there. I mean, they just kind of became Frieza's henchmen, sort of taking the place in some ways of Elec and Gas, Dodoria, Zarbon, whatever. They weren't that big of a deal to me. But
Maki did remind me a lot of Frieza whenever she went and recruited Goku and Vegeta and basically acted like a damsel. It did remind me a lot of the Broly film whenever Frieza basically faked Paragus being killed. It did remind me a lot of that. But other than that, Maki, she just kind of has that evil feminine energy that Frieza has.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess it's a one way to put it. Let's not forget, too, Frieza also took out Elec because he realized that he was trying to set Frieza up to get killed by Gas and be overthrown. But he didn't know that Frieza went to go train. He had no idea. He had no idea what was really going on. So, yeah. I love it. I love it. What can you do? Anyways, with that being said, we're out of here. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll catch you in the next one.